This is a UC San Diego Blinkcast.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the Learn at Lunch series. This is for February 2010. And on behalf of the Faculty Staff Assistance Program and the UCSD Staff Association, I'm glad that you all chose to come today. And our presenter today is an alumna of UCSD. She graduated magna cum laude here, so we're very pleased to have her with us here. She earned her Ph.D. in psychology with an emphasis in creativity and spirituality, and you see that reflected in all her original art that is hung around the room today. Today, Dr. Longworth is going to be sharing with us her very personal story that has become a signature of hers, Cocoon to Butterfly, Creative Midlife Change. I'd like to ask you all to hold your questions to the end so that I'm able to get this microphone to you and we're able to then capture your question on the recording. And so for the time being, I'll turn over the presentation to Dr. Longworth. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, my heart right now feels very full because it was several months ago that I received an invitation to speak here. And as Dr. Green mentioned, it's been 25 years since I was on this campus as a student, and a lot has happened since then. And I've come back 10 years after I graduated. I came back and I taught for 4 years in extension. I taught in the creative process area and department. And one of the things that really pulled me when I was invited to come here was a passion for the soul's journey, the deeper journey that we go on as individuals, especially at midlife. And after I graduated as a fine art student, what I found is that a lot of people were interested and were coming to me and saying, you know, you're really creative. I want some of that. I'm going through this big change. Can you help me? And that inspired me to move forward in my career and my life in a way that's been really rewarding. So I brought about 20 paintings here to be like a cocoon, to be like a wonderful womb or safe space, hopefully for our hour together today, to support us in that deeper soul's journey, in our own cocoon to butterfly, in our own creative process. These two paintings, also seen here, are very much indicative of the midlife process of getting to a place in your life where all of a sudden you need to let go. You need to shed parts of yourself. Sometimes it happens automatically, like for some people, they're in a career that all of a sudden disappears, or they're in a marriage that all of a sudden no longer works, and they have to shed that. Or sometimes it may be belief systems that they've had, cherished dreams that you've had in your childhood that were really precious to you, and you've been able to live them out to a point when you realize, you know what, I'm no longer that person. Like the cocoon with a skin all around it, there's something emerging inside of me, and it's not the same creature that I was before. So midlife is this really juicy time when we're called to go through a lot of losses. Like that cocoon, you know, the creature that's inside of that cocoon really has to shed a whole lot in order to become the butterfly. And I think that's the deeper question that we're called to ask at midlife, is around, who am I now? You know, who am I? What is my truth? Where am I going? How can I be in touch with that authentic essence that I can feel? You know, that's part of when I invited some of you who came in early to go around and feel the paintings and find one that you might take home with you in your imagination to a special place, and then stand in front of that and feel it. Because there's a sense of knowing that we have, a deep, I'm seeing a lot of nods in the audience, which makes me feel really excited. There's that feeling that we have, that intuition, that gut, something that we have that we can be guided by. And we often are, but sometimes it takes getting out of our own way. To share something really funny with you, about 5 minutes before we started, I needed to use the ladies' room. So I left, and I had no idea where the ladies' room was. And so I'm walking around, and there was a nice gentleman there, and I asked him, and he said, well, you can go follow the symbols either way. And I thought, follow the symbols either way, that's profound. So I turned and I went this way, and I found I found the bathrooms, right? And I wasn't paying attention, and I just opened the door, and it was the men's room. I'm like, okay, I do have to follow the symbols. And like, okay, that is the women's room. But when I was going through that simple motion, it made me think, gosh, this is the process, moment by moment, really following not only the logic of how do I get out of a room and who do I talk to, but to follow the more subtle signs and symbols that are there if we listen. I love this quote. How many people have heard this quote before? In the middle of the road of my life, I awoke in the dark wood where the true way was wholly lost. And this wonderful quote from Dante speaks so powerfully to that process of a couple of things I see at the middle of the road of my life. What a beautiful way to speak about midlife. I mean, I think most of us are sort of in that middle road here. And there's something so powerful about recognizing that we do wake up and all of a sudden we recognize it's dark and we're lost. You know, kind of like me trying to find a ladies' room. You know, I recognized that I was lost and I asked for help. And I was given some directions, but I still sort of stumbled along. So that's a powerful way to speak about something that really happens in midlife, is that it's okay to be lost. It's okay that we're not clear about where we're going. Yeah. So I'm going to begin by telling you a little bit about my journey and how the cocoon to butterfly process has kind of evolved in my life. This is a family photo from the very last family vacation that I took. I grew up in San Diego, and we all were going to go to Hawaii, and it turned out right after we had this vacation that my parents got a divorce. And I want you to notice the yellow windbreakers. They all match. So this was really cool to my mother to have the whole family with matching windbreakers. To my 17-year-old brother, this was not so cool. But anyway, I'm sharing this photo because when I went through my parents going through the divorce, it was really devastating, even though it made sense in my mind that it wasn't working out and it was appropriate for them to get a divorce and that the family would be a lot more peaceful after it all happened. It was devastating because at the same time, I was just entering junior high school. And I had gone from Grant Elementary School, for those local people who might know Grant, I had gone from Grant Elementary School, where I knew everybody in the school, and I walked to school, to Dana Junior High, where I knew only one other student. And all of a sudden, I was going through puberty and paying attention to, was I accepted? It was a very difficult time. And I noticed all the different cliques that were in place, and I noticed the games that were in place, and I didn't want to play those games. But I desperately wanted to belong, and I wanted to feel secure. So what happened is I ended up making a necklace. As you can see, I like necklaces. I made a necklace and I wore it to school, and my girlfriend, who sat behind me in English, she looked at it and she said, Lori said, I want that necklace. Where can I buy it? And I said, you can buy it from me. And so I sold her the necklace, and I immediately bought twice the number of beads that from the proceeds of the necklace, and I started to sell these necklaces at school. And I began to have a reputation as being the necklace lady. And so at 15, I launched this business that became very successful. I carried in a cigar box, I carried all of these necklaces that I would make every night, and then I'd bring them to school, and people in between classes would say, hey, necklace lady, what do you got? You know, and I'd pop it open. and I remember taking the bus home, and I remember I had sold $40 worth of jewelry. And for a 15-year-old, that was a lot of money, and I was really excited. So I made a decision that I wanted to be really wealthy. I wanted to be a millionaire, because I figured that was the metaphor. That was my butterfly of my own becoming was, hey, if you have a lot of stuff, then you can have control over your life. and I'm going to have control over my life by having all this stuff. Now, I didn't think of that consciously, but that I think was what was going on inside of me. So I set on my path to become very wealthy. And about 4 years later, there's a picture of me in my jewelry. So 4 years later, I'm 19 years old. I live in a 7-acre home right overlooking Black's Beach off of La Jolla Farms Road. I fall in love with someone, and I'm living the life of my dreams. It's a kind of a jet set lifestyle. We've got cooks and chauffeurs, and it's just this, everything I could possibly imagine in that butterfly of my own becoming that I had kind of come up with when I was 15 happened. And I was on top of the world. It was like, this is unbelievable. I'm so happy. So I call it my looking good time, because I wanted to look good. And a lot of that really was about feeling loved. And so things went along really well for about 6 months. And all of a sudden, I started to get sick. I started to have these massive, massive headaches. And soon that was followed by nausea. And I couldn't even walk straight down a hall. And I started going to doctors. I ended up going to over 17 different doctors in a period of 4 months to try to diagnose what was wrong with me. And finally, one magnificent surgeon heard about my case, and he said, "This does not make sense. I'm going to take you under my wing, and we're going to figure out what's going on." And his name is Dr. Dennis Nigro. He's a plastic surgeon, and he had just started his career at the time. And my God, talk about mentors and angels. I mean, he was that person for me. So he said, I went ahead and had a CAT scan. They immediately determined I had this massive brain tumor in my left lower cerebellum. And at that point, it was getting worse and worse, to the point where I was bedridden and I had to be fed. And I couldn't do anything on my own. I was basically bedridden. And what he did is he orchestrated a team of 4 brain surgeons that he was communicating with, and they were testing me. The problem was that the tumor was a good kind of tumor if you have to have one. It was a blastoma meningioma kind of tumor, which was fibrous, so it would not reproduce and spread. But it was right, in fact, I can show you the scar right here. It was in my left lower cerebellum. And so the problem was the chances of them taking it out without me being a quadriplegic or without me having massive physical problems was very, very slim. So the strategy was to wait and see if technology would be improved, or if they were waiting and waiting to the very last moment to when they would absolutely have to do the surgery. And so finally the day came where within 24 hours I was going to die if I didn't have the surgery. And the team came together, and the 4 of them planned the surgery for about 5 hours. I was on the table for about 4 hours, and I emerged and actually made medical history. There was no complications in terms of having to teach me how to walk, talk, read, any of that stuff. It was a miracle. I mean, miracle. It was made medical history. It was a miracle in my book. I mean, I was alive. But the bigger thing that happened for me, and that was an incredible, incredible gift, the bigger thing that happened for me was something opened up. And I had a near-death experience that was so profound. It was as if, and I thought my life was pretty awesome at the time, but it was as if that life was more like a black and white photograph, and I had entered this technicolor, multidimensional, blissful experience of something so blissful, so full of love, and so full of joy. I can't even find words today to describe it, even though I've spent my life trying to be in service to that larger who am I, that larger who we are, is this incredibly beautiful, alive life. So I'm 19 years old, and I'm recovering. Oops, try it this way. I'm 19 years old, I'm recovering in the hospital, and There's so much love around me. It's amazing. But what I'm really filled with is this passionate desire to share what I've experienced. And I'm quiet about it and very secretive until slowly I began to share it with people. And what I found is that the more I tried to communicate, like if I would try to share it with you right now, the more I tried to communicate, like in the moment there was an opening, but as I tried to share it, instead of people like going, wow, or yeah, or anything positive and opening, instead it was closing, and it was like, are you sure you're okay? Maybe the brain surgeon, maybe you should talk to a psychiatrist, and it was very difficult. So I found that I just started to shut that down, and very soon that part of me was really cocooned, and it took a full 5 years to find a language to express that, and it was very painful because if you take what's so precious and so important to you as a human being and take your ability to share that, to experience it yourself and share it with another person, it's like I survived, but it was not a passionate life. And what I ended up doing was going back to a strategy of looking good. So I started a modeling career, and I did print modeling and fashion modeling. I did television commercials. Now we go to the next. And I kind of led this sort of luscious, juicy, superficial life. It was wonderful and very kind of lacking of that deeper fire within, if you know what I mean. And then I had the gift of meeting artist Francois Sheilo. I was an art student here at UCSD. And I had the opportunity to go up to Idlewild, the Ensenada Idlewild School of Music and Arts up there. I see some people know that school. It's an amazing place. And I stayed with her in her cabin with her daughter. And every morning we would walk through the woods to go to the place, the big room, the art studio where we were all painting. And there's a picture of one of the paintings that we were doing. So we worked on these large cotton canvases. They were bed sheets, and we painted them. And it was an incredible experience. But a couple days into this painting process, I was walking with Francois, and I think I finally felt comfortable enough to open up and share with her my own near-death experience. And I shared about what I had gone through, and she just looked at me, and she goes like, well, of course, I get it. I don't know how many people know Francois, but she is a very brilliant woman, very creative, had the book earlier on the cover of her book, Life with Picasso. She lived with him for 12 years, and she's just a very brilliant, deeply spiritual woman, and that was part of the key. She showed up as a mentor for me because she could really see me and show a mirror to me. And in that way she said, as I talked about my experience, she said, yeah, I get it, now go paint. I get it, go paint. It's like, okay, stop trying. So that's exactly what I did. I went up to my canvas, and I started to really let go. And I let intuition be my guide. And I just went in this space, and all of a sudden, these symbols and this mythic images and this energy, this language kind of came out of the painting. And I recognized, I'm like I can feel it even as I'm saying it, I get excited about it because something came forth that was so authentic, and it really didn't come from me, and it certainly didn't come from me trying to look good, which is a lot of what my art was about prior to that. It came from this other primal, powerful place where it just, it came forth, and like a language, like English that we speak, these symbols were something that I could start to work with. And I was on fire. I did 3 large paintings in the week that I was there. But when I came back home, we had, in the house that I was in, that I showed you a picture of earlier, we had a 7-car garage. I had to move all the cars out, and I had canvases that were set, so I could do 6, 7 canvases at a time. And I was working around the clock, and I ended up painting 50 paintings in about 3 months because I was so on fire with this passion of having at last a language to really express my soul. So I painted about 50 of these paintings, and they hung in Mandeville Center. You can see on that bottom, you can see a little sense of the paintings that were there, that bottom panel. What I did is I hired a choreographer and 14 dancers, and they did an hour-long dance at this performance event, which was my kind of special project, major completing project for my degree. And the 14 dancers danced out this hour-long dance, and we made masks and things for them. There was, all of the paintings were images of transformation. It was called Transformation. And then up here is one of the dancers. He was the golden bird. And the little girl was going on I took a myth. I basically made a very simple story, like a child story, to tell the story of transcendence and what happened to me in a very simple way that could hopefully be communicated by those people that get story in that way. So we had the dancers doing that kind of transformational dance. There were the 50 paintings that were all lit up in the courtyard at Mandeville. There was a group of people, there was a fire walk, so that picture there is of a fire walk that was going on. And that was the idea of transforming fear into power. I also made my beaded costume that has a golden bird that's emerging from a girl. And we had about 1,000 people attended it. And for me, it was this enormous place of feeling like, for those of you who are familiar with the hero's journey, somewhere at the end, you're able to bring it back to the community. You're able to go through all the trials and the tribulations and the challenges of the journey, and somehow you're able to bring it back and share something. So for me, after these 5 years of really, having this passionate experience cocooned, this event in 1985 was an enormous butterfly, an enormous experience of, yes, at last I can share this powerful something, whatever we want to call it, that I experienced. And then I could move on. So I'm not yet to midlife at this point. I'm 25 years old, but I'm going through different journeys of completion and letting go and cycles, like the butterfly's journey of metamorphosis. So, like I think a lot of students, after they graduate from any kind of educational program, but for me it was especially strong after my bachelor's degree, was what's next? Where do I go and what do I do? And I had another mentor that came into my life that was a very powerful teacher. He was really like a spiritual father to me. And I ended up having almost daily dialogues with Dr. Jonas Salk, who at the time was very committed to creating an institute for creativity that would bring together creative geniuses from all different disciplines to really solve some of the world's problems, not through traditional means, but through a creative approach. And so many times I would hear him say, let intuition be your guide with reason by its side. He had such a passion for creativity. And he was a mentor in that he was also able to confirm in me this creative fire that he saw. And I remember one scene especially that was really powerful. The way we communicated was primarily by phone, and he would always call me every other day or so, and usually we'd meditate. We talked for maybe 20, 25 minutes. We'd usually meditate for about 10 minutes, and then come out of the silence with him sharing his wisdom and about creativity. He was very much into evolution and the possibility that we can be creative or co-creative participants in life and in our own evolution. So so I remember one particular time, and I was in my garden, and it happened to be an exquisitely beautiful San Diego day, and I had this little garden outside of my bedroom. It was bricked walled-in area with lots of flowers around, and I was just sitting there, and we were talking, and I was saying to him, I remember my hand was kind of on a wall, and I was saying, Jonas, I don't know where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do. And just in that moment, a butterfly landed on my hand. And it was really slight, but I could feel it, and I looked over, and internally I heard a whisper. How many people ever hear whispers internally? Oh, come on, more than one person! Okay, well, I heard one, and it was Cocoon to butterfly. And at that time, I had already started seeing people individually doing work. I didn't call it that, but I was I didn't call it anything. I was just helping them, and they paid me to we'd sit and talk or go for a walk, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a way to just talk about it. So that was the beginning. In that moment, that metaphor was like a medicine for me. I went, aha, okay, this is it. I'll stick to this, and I'll put it on I'll talk about it, and this is where I'm going. So I used that way back then, and anyway, it was a real privilege to have dialogues with him for about 5 years, to just before he passed, because I think I needed again to be seen. I think we need to have mentors in our lives that can see us, like Francois did, and other people I've worked with, and that's I think the biggest thing that I find in working with other people in my private practice is to really be able to go down over some time with dialogue to a deeper place with them, and then be able to bring up some mirrors, some ways that I can say, okay, here's what I'm seeing, or are you seeing this? What are you seeing? And I think there's something so powerful of why we need each other to be able to grow and take the deeper path, the deeper soul's journey of life. So in terms of the deeper journey of life, one of the things that I needed to do was I had this pretty far out ride. I'm speaking hippie language. But I had when I was 19, I had this brain surgery, which was pretty radical, and I had this visionary experience. But I needed to ground it. And so somehow in my process, I found myself going on hikes and spending 2-3 hours at Torrey Pines State Park. How many people love Torrey Pines? See if you guys, oh yes, it's such a treasure for us to have here, huh? So I found myself spending lots of time in nature. And I found my art was starting to change too. And I was finding I was starting to work with masks, and I started to work with branches, and it got very primal. And another mentor came into my life, and he was a medicine man, and his name was White Cloud. And White Cloud was a beautiful human being who's both a physician, a Western physician, and a Native American shaman. And he had a vision quest that he was bringing a group of people to attend. There was about a dozen of us. And we were taking off in San Diego and driving to Wyoming, to some very sacred land. How many people have done vision quests or anything like that? Everybody raised their hand, yes! And for our viewers, they're watching this. We have okay. Basically, a vision quest is Native people, indigenous peoples, often have vision quests where they will go out and take a period of time on their own, and sometimes there's very specific rites and rituals and rules in the culture that they're a part of, but they basically go out in nature to receive a vision, to receive a message. Like I'm talking a lot about the butterfly of your own becoming. If we have, like my earlier one, it was like looking good, being wealthy, and that drew me forward to create that. Well, the vision quest is a spiritual kind of quest about your own, oftentimes, place in the tribe, who you are and what you're about. So this vision quest that I took, I was very excited about. And I was about 5 minutes away from the car arriving to pick me up to go on the journey. And all of a sudden, again, that little whisper said, find your charm bracelet, your sterling silver charm bracelet that you had as a girl. Find that and bring that with you. So I grabbed a paper bag and I found my jewelry box. Did you guys have jewelry boxes when you were a little kid that had the little dolls in it and stuff? So I found my sterling silver charm bracelet and I threw it in the bag and I threw some strings in and some jewelry making objects and tools in my bag. And I stuffed it in my backpack and I headed out the door. And when I left, when I was greeted by White Cloud, and in his hand, he had this amazing hat that had been given to him by someone. And it was a special hat that had a special weave that was to be worn by the shaman of that particular group. So someone had given him this very special hat, and he was giving me this very special hat. I'm like, I'm not a shaman, whatever. But I'm like, okay, thank you, thank you. So I took the hat, and I put it on my head, got in the car, and we're all headed off to this several-day journey to drive to Wyoming. And in the process of driving to Wyoming, I'm very, very involved in creating a necklace. So I start pulling out my charm bracelet and taking the charms off and weaving them into this rather elaborate, quite wonderful necklace. It was cool, it was really fun. And as I was doing it, I was looking at the different charms. Remember, oh, this is the one of the castle that we got at Disneyland when I was 7, And so they were symbolically connecting me. And when we arrived in the land, I had my necklace, and I had my hat, and I was participating in this vision quest with a group, with about 12 of these participants. And the event's going really well, and people are having these big ahas, and I had nothing happened for me. So the next day we were leaving, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go out on my own, and I'm gonna, go for a walkabout, go and find something, some experience. So I headed out and was walking up around these beautiful rocks, and I'm admiring the plants. Everything is just really grabbing me. I'm absorbed in the beauty of it all. And suddenly I look up and I realize I am totally lost, and it's getting dark. I have no water. I have no food. I have no whistle. I have no idea where my campsite is. And we are out like in the middle of nowhere. So I first had that enormous adrenaline kind of fear, that kind of and then I kept breathing and walking, and I just said, okay, something's going to happen. I'm going to find my way back. And of course, I have my trusty hat, and I've got my necklace on. And so I'm walking, and I'm walking, and I'm kind of in a trance, like kind of a deep meditative state. And all of a sudden, I look up, and it has become so dark, like velvet black dark. And there are a billion, million, trillion stars out. And you probably all have been in that magnificent desert sky. It was unbelievable. It was so beautiful. And boom, I knew that was my vision. And when that happened, those billion, million stars, it's like I just spontaneously grabbed my necklace and I was holding on to it. And what I got was those stars. Each one of those stars was a connection that I had had with another soul, with someone. It could be this moment with you, but it was so beautiful. And you are a star in the sky of my life. And that was my vision. And immediately I took up this necklace and put it on my hat. And what do you think is in here? Yep. This was actually made 2 years after I ended up wearing this hat. So here's the hat. And after I put the necklace around the hat, I was guided to, every time I had a beautiful experience, like in this moment, if I was with the hat and you and I were here in some moment where it would be appropriate, like it really is. Your name is?
Kathy.
Kathy. So, Kathy, does a butterfly mean anything to you?
Oh, yeah.
What?
a bit. I don't know. I plant in my garden a lot of butterfly bush and milkweed
Yeah?
to attract them. And
Yeah.
I just find them exquisitely beautiful.
Good. So you plant them in your garden with milkweed to attract them, and you find them
Yes.
beautiful. And how about in terms of your own deeper journey?
Well, I hope to get there. I hope to be that butterfly when I retire and have time.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's part of what you're
Oh, absolutely.
being pulled towards. That's
Yes.
your emerging
Very
self.
much so, yes.
Yeah, and when I look into your eyes, it's so because you have beautiful eyes, and we happen to have a blue butterfly. I just got these, by the way, at the Museum of Man. When I took a little, I'll be talking about this at the very end, but one of the things that's so important to do for all of us is to really nurture ourselves on a daily and weekly basis. And one way, nurture ourselves, our soul, our creative self. And one way to do that is to go to places like Balboa Park, where there's museums, and Torrey Pines, like I spoke of, and whatever it is for you, like Birch Aquarium, if that does it for you, where you get that yummy thing. So I was there getting my yummy thing, and I found these, and I wanted to put these on my hat. So this is a brand new little offering that I'm going to give to you, and I see it somehow I see this really reflect in your eyes, and I can see when I look in your eyes the beauty of your soul and of your creative self. So to honor that.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So what I started to find out in this process of doing this little hat offering and connecting with people is that the act of that for me was moving me into something that really felt authentic and real. And I don't want to say like the modeling and the $1 million house and the jet set lifestyle and that isn't totally real, but it wasn't real for this deep in here. And it took me a while to grow out of that. And two, I think with the midlife journey, sometimes we want to think, our mind wants to think it's a linear process, and you go through this big, well, yeah, she had a midlife crisis, and this and this happened. And oftentimes it's a series of things over time that happen. So that's the story of the hat, the giveaway hat. One of the things that I love also that's very connected to this whole idea of that I've been talking about connection has to do with the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic for art. And what it translated into was the invisible painting between two people. For in ancient Egypt, the highest form of art, it wasn't their temples and their gold magnificent sculptures. It was relationship itself. And again, I think, how cool is that? How cool is that? And how can we, sometimes, it's that shift in perception, because we live in a culture that is consumer-oriented, that is thing-oriented, and success-oriented looks a certain way. And what if success-oriented looked like a lot of starry sky, a lot of stars that you're dancing with in your life? I mean, that's a very different paradigm, a very different way of seeing. So I think sometimes in midlife, it's also about, again, the shedding of old ways of seeing and emerging into what is authentic for your own self. So I went on, I studied with a shaman, and this is in the Amazon, and continued to study shamanism. And when I say shamanism, it's more of a general, deeper connection to the earth with different indigenous peoples, because I've been fascinated with how those cultures connect in a very authentic way. Also began exploring masks. I worked a lot with masks for a number of years. This kind of is the unconscious, then it breaks open. The second one is the self-conscious that breaks open to the higher conscious, or the superconscious self. Here are some more of the sculptures that I made over a period of time. And here's some points, too, about, I think, again, the calling is for us to join our soul's journey, whatever that looks like for me. And when I say the word soul, it is non-religious. I mean, essence would be another word we could substitute for that. And also to really take time to listen deeply. That's one of the most important things that you can do is, with as much stuff. I mean, who was it that was talking about retirement? You're talking about retirement, and when you have the time, well, make the time. Even if it's half an hour, once every third day, I think that's so important to do. And also, intuition is guide. Jonas used to say, let intuition be your guide with reason by its side. And I think both of those are really important. I've gotten off balance when I've been just so intuitively led that I wasn't listening to my rational mind. And that's not good either. So I think it's a balance of both of those. But especially in terms of your essential journey, listening to your intuition is huge. I want to just take a few minutes to talk about this work too. Back in 2001, I started a vision of painting these kind of paintings, which could travel. These are 40 paintings that I rolled up and put in a little tiny backpack. Dr. Green saw me. It's small, right? It's very small, and I can get 50 paintings and put them in a backpack, jump on a plane, and go to Australia and set up in Melbourne, set up a hotel room with paintings in about 45 minutes or an hour that transform the space. So that was a vision that I had, and I began to create. Here's the art studio that I'm working in. As you can see, I can do several paintings on each of the tables at a time, and these are drawings right there. And then here's these ones had qualities on them, and some were more figurative. And so, oops, that's interesting. So we're getting to see them. So they also traveled, they traveled for a number of years. I was focused on them traveling in conferences. This was a conference in San Jose. They were in smaller places like Esalen, up in the Bay Area. And I'm going to go on to my mom's story in a second. But it was very important for me to cut back on my private practice, because my private practice was very full and I loved it passionately. But I also wanted to be true to my artist self. So I decided to see less clients. I did a lot more phone work, and was able to let go of a big, huge office that I had, and start seeing people privately in my home, which was a wonderful opportunity to kind of lighten my load. That's not really the way I want to say it, but just make a shift to be able to experiment for a number of years and do art more full time. So I did a lot of traveling with the paintings, and it was a fantastic experience. And I also came full circle in that I realized that it's, for this particular human vehicle, it's too much to be traveling the way I was. And I decided, I love San Diego. I'm going to keep my life really simple. I'm going to continue painting in my art studio, and I'm going to continue seeing clients in my office in Solana Beach. And so I went through a transition with that. And part of the transition was fueled by, in 2003, my mom passed away. How many people have parents that have passed? Yeah. So that's a big part of loss and shedding and letting go is the loss of our parents. Midlife is a time of loss of youth, loss sometimes of our roles as parents. And certainly the loss of a parent is a big one. So I wanted to talk briefly about that. I've never really spoken publicly about my mom's death and my own transition with her. So I wanted to take this opportunity to do so. She was a model when she was younger. I decided to have a surprise party for her. It was totally intuition as my guide. But she was turning 74, and it was in February. Her birthday is in about a week from now. I said, we got to have a big surprise birthday party for her. So we got together. This is my mom coming in. This is her husband. My mom coming in the door. Everybody's surprised. It was a great party, fantastic, very successful, wonderful. 2 months later, she's dead. You don't know, and it was one of those things that I'm so glad it happened as it did in terms of everybody coming together right towards the end of her life. that we were able to also, we were on her deathbed. Everyone was surrounded by her. She had a quick death. It only lasted a day in the hospital, which is exactly what she wanted. So it was early for someone to die. But anyway, she passed, and she was an amazing woman. What I wanted to share was that I think when you have to go through your parents' belongings, it's a very interesting process. And one of the things that I did was I saved all of her, these are all hair barrettes. She always wore her hair in very fancy ways, and she loved barrettes. So I made this cross for her. And I actually, on the year anniversary of her death, I added this picture, or these pictures. This picture on the year anniversary, the second year anniversary, I added that one, and to pay homage to her. And then this is another one I made also. This has some more hair ornaments, but it also has perfume bottles, because she loved perfume. And that painting is actually over there. And she loved diamonds. I'm wearing one of her diamond rings. So Diamond Glory is the name of this painting, and it was an homage to her beauty and to the essence of her. And then I'm going to go forward. I know that again, this is something I've never shared publicly, and certainly not to people that I don't know. So I just feel the calling to do this because this was a very personal process that I went through, but it was also part of my midlife journey and healing through art. And in 2008, I went through a divorce, and it was a beautiful marriage, and I didn't want it to really end, but it just what happened. And I'm in my new home, unpacking boxes, and I decided to really take the time as I was unpacking things to really be with each object and really listen to each object and where it wanted to go. So I was in a pretty meditative state, and I had unpacked my grandmother's, this beautiful teapot, hand-painted teapot of hers, and I decided it wanted to go in this other room, and I placed it very carefully. I very carefully placed it like right underneath a beautiful painting. And then I found another stained glass window with butterflies on it that I loved. I loved all the colors in it. And that also, when I tuned in and I felt it, it really wanted to go right next to the teapot. And then I went back into the other room, and I'm unpacking things. And I'm in this very beautiful state. And all of a sudden, there's this enormous crash that goes down. And the painting had fallen off the wall, and it fell on the teapot and on the stained glass window. And I found that out. But here's the thing that was so profound for me, is that when I heard those crashes, I knew obviously something was destroyed. You could tell by the sound of it. But I didn't react. I wasn't in like, oh my God, bad. It was just like, it was more of a sense of, oh, isn't this interesting? This happened. And so when I went, because I was in that more meditative state, more, non-judgmental, fearful, whatever. And so I went into the other room, and it was fascinating. There were these most exquisite shards of hand-painted glass and stained glass in these incredible angles, and they were so beautiful. I just stood there and I looked at them, just went, wow. And I went and I got a tray, and I carefully put them down on the tray, immediately turned on my hot glue gun. For those of you who play with, I turned on my glue gun, and this thing, within minutes, assembled itself. And it spoke to me so powerfully about that process, the shed, break, shatter, and the emerge. And it seemed like, this is so beautiful. Like it was a metaphoric image also, or a situation of my own marriage. I would never take my grandmother's teapot and throw it to the ground. And I would never take this other precious thing, and throw it to the ground and break it. But it happened. Life happens, And then from it we make this beauty. We make this beauty. We make this beauty. We make this beauty. So the question becomes, what is your masterpiece inside of you? What is being made? These are art cards that I created, and I'll talk about this as a practice kind of coming to the end of my time with you, so I'll just say that I've made handmade art cards as a practice to be continually in the art studio. Who are you? Where are you going? Your purpose, your passion. It's a process, right? And I think the deepest thing that, if there's anything that I want to say to you right now, as I'm taking a moment to just be in this moment, is what I feel is a profound connection, a profound place of love. And a lot of the time, if I can stay in that place of I don't know, I know I'm in love, I know I'm attempting to be of service, I know that I must be true to my own journey. And just like trying to find the ladies' room, you know, there'll be guides. And even so, you'll probably stumble and walk through the wrong door. But it's okay. It's part of the beauty of this messy and magnificent life that we're given. Thank you.
This has been a UC San Diego Blinkcast. For more, visit us online at blinkcast.ucsd.edu.